Good morning and welcome, friends. Today is a special meeting. We are gathered at Bethesda, Washington, D.C. area for the commemorative meeting of the United Lodge of Theosophists for the commemoration of HPV's life and work. This special day is being honored all over the world in every country because of the sacrifice of HPV. There would be no Theosophy in the world today. So our gratitude goes to that great lodge for sending HPV into our world. Today's program has 3 readings. The first one from the Voice of the Silence, the second, the Bhagavad Gita, the third, the Light of Asia, which is going to be followed by a biographical talk.
This is from the Voice of the Silence. Of teachers there are many. The Master Soul is one Alaya, the Universal Soul. Live in that Master as its ray in thee. Live in thy fellows as they live in it. Before thou standest on the threshold of the path, before thou crossest the foremost gate, thou hast to merge the two into one, and sacrifice the personal to self-impersonal, and thus destroy the path between the two, antaskarana. Thou hast to be prepared to answer Dharma, the stern law, whose voice will ask thee at thy initial step, hast thou complied with all the rules, O thou of lofty hopes? Hast thou attuned thy heart and mind to the great mind and heart of all mankind? For as the sacred river's roaring voice, whereby all nature sounds are echoed back, so must the heart of him who in the stream would enter thrill in response to every sigh and thought of all that lives and breathes. Remember, thou that fightest for man's liberation, each failure is success, and each sincere attempt wins its reward in time. The holy germs that sprout and grow, unseen at the disciple's soul, their stalks wax strong at each new trial. They bend like reeds, but never break, nor can they ever be lost. But when the hour has struck, they blossom forth. The seeds of wisdom cannot sprout and grow in airless space. To live and reap experience, the mind needs breadth and depth, and points to draw it towards the diamond soul. Seek not those points in Maya's realm, but soar beyond illusions. Search the eternal and the changeless Sat, mistrusting fancy's false suggestions. For mind is like a mirror, it gathers dust while it reflects. It needs the gentle breezes of soul wisdom to brush away the dust of our illusions. Seek, O beginner, to blend thy mind and soul. The Dharma of the eye is the embodiment of the external and the non-existent. The Dharma of the heart is the embodiment of Bodhi, the permanent and everlasting.
Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, what of Keshava is the description of that wise and devoted man who is fixed in contemplation and confirmed in spiritual knowledge? Does he move and act like other men? Krishna, a man is said to be confirmed in spiritual knowledge when he forsaketh every desire which entereth into his heart, and of himself is happy and content in the self, through the self. His mind is undisturbed in adversity. He is happy and contented in prosperity, and he is a stranger to anxiety, fear, and anger. True wisdom of a spiritual kind is freedom from self-esteem, hypocrisy, and injury to others. It is patience, sincerity, respect for spiritual instructors, purity, firmness, self-restraint, dispassion for objects of sense, freedom from pride, and a meditation upon birth, death, decay, sickness, and error. It is an exemption from self-identifying attachment for children, wife, and household, and a constant, unwavering steadiness of heart upon the arrival of every event, whether favorable or unfavorable. It is a resolute continuance in the study of Adhyatma, the superior spirit, and a meditation upon the end of the acquirement of a knowledge of truth. This is called wisdom, or a spiritual knowledge. Fearlessness, sincerity, assiduity in devotion, generosity, self-restraint, piety, and almsgivings, the study, mortification, and rectitude, harmlessness, veracity, and freedom from anger, resignation, equanimity, and not speaking of the faults of others, universal compassion, modesty and mildness, patience, power, fortitude, and purity, discretion, dignity, unrevengefulness, and freedom from conceit. These are the marks of him whose virtues are of a godlike character. What is night to those who are unenlightened is as day to his gaze. What seems as day is known to him as night, the night of ignorance. Such is the self-governed sage.
This is from the Life of Asia. Pray not, the darkness will not brighten. Ask not from the silence, for it cannot speak. Vex not your mournful minds with pious pains. Ah, brothers, sisters, seek not from the helpless gods by gift and hymn, nor bribe with blood, nor feed with fruit and cakes. Within yourselves deliverance must be sought. Each man his prison makes. Who toiled a slave may come anew a prince, for gentle worthiness and merit won. Who ruled a king may wander earth in rags, for things done and undone. Higher than Indra's ye may lift your lot, and sink it lower than the worm or gnat. The end of many myriad of lives is this, the end of myriads that. Only while turns this wheel invisible, no pause, no peace, no staying place can be. Who mounts will fall, who falls may mount. The spokes go round unceasingly. If ye lay bound upon the wheel of change, and no way were of breaking from the chain, the heart of boundless being is a curse, the soul of things without pain. Ye are not bound, the soul of things is sweet, the heart of being is celestial rest. The stronger than woe is will, that which was good doth pass to better best. I, Buddha, who wept with all my brothers' tears, whose heart was broken by a whole world's woe, laugh and am glad, for there is liberty. Ho, ye who suffer, know, ye suffer from yourselves. None else compels, none other holds you that ye live and die, and whirl upon the wheel, and hug and kiss its spokes of agony, its tire of tears, its nave of nothingness. Behold, I show you truth, lower than hell, higher than heaven, outside the utmost stars, farther than Brahm doth dwell, before beginning and without an end, as space eternal and as surety sure, is fixed a power divine, which moves to good, only its laws endure. Now for today's talk.
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky passed away on May 8, 1891. Theosophists annually commemorate May 8, which is this coming Wednesday for this year, as White Lotus Day. a devotional memorial to celebrate the signpost of the path to divine wisdom that HPV left for the world. The lotus is the flower sacred to nature and her gods. It represents the abstract and the concrete universes as the emblem of the productive powers of both spiritual and physical nature. The seeds of the lotus contain, even before they germinate, perfectly formed leaves, the miniature shapes of the plants they will become. Nature thus giving us a specimen of the pre-formation of its production. Through analogy and correspondence, we can use the symbol of the lotus and HPV's other illustrations to see that everything from the cosmos to man was rooted in the divine spark from the one all, gradually passing through the spiritual world, materializing from primordial matter, and differentiating into numerous forms. It is in the spiritual aspects of correspondences, of analogies, of symbols, and graphs that we find the enduring work and message of HPV. She acted as ambassador, bridging the gulf between knowledge of today and the wisdom of the masters. HPV came to the world at large. She was the preserver, the synthesizer, and the transmitter of ancient spiritual wisdom. She passed along codified old and pure records, thus resurrecting the spiritual heritage that is ours. She repeatedly advised us not to follow her or her path, but to follow the path she showed the masters that are behind. On this day we gather to commune and read from devotional books chosen by her for this occasion, and listen to a talk evoking the concepts of Theosophy. In redirecting our lives to the work of HPV, we participate in the continual lighting up of Manas. We attune ourselves with the task of creating the means by which each human can see through this illusory material existence and open our hearts to charity, justice, and generosity. Through self-education and self-efforts, we create our own path that follows the path that she showed to the state that she modeled. If we value this jewel, it points the way to eradication of ignorance and superstition, uprooting of selfishness and separateness, and laying of a sound basis for universal brotherhood as we complete our journey through matter on our way back to our source. We will commit ourselves to help the few spread, broadcast these teachings in their purity, and otherwise keep the chain unbroken for the sake of humanity's future. HPV was prematurely near midnight on August 12, 1831, in the midst of a cholera epidemic. Her survival was in question, and immediate baptism was decided upon. A child holding a candle nodded sleepily and set fire to the robes of the officiating priest. This incident may have been an omen of difficulties to come for HPV. When HPV was born, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, and Henry David Thoreau had already incarnated in the United States and were on their way to becoming known as HPV's precursors. HPV's dad was an officer in the forces of Tsar Nicholas I, the Iron Tsar. She took to horseback riding at the nearby army garrison. She became known for her daring and unconventionality, such as not following the tradition of ladies riding side saddle. She was not afraid to ride any horse. HPV's honesty of expression seemed daring and abrupt, and horrified some of the servants, particularly in view of her psychic powers. Her mother, an accomplished and well-known writer, died before HPV's 11th birthday, concerned about difficulties she foresaw for her daughter. HPV's grandmother was a princess, and her grandfather was privy councillor to the Tsar. Her great-grandfather was a prince, a student of alchemy and magic, and a Kabbalist. She would often be found reading in his library when she visited him. When in London at the age of 19, HPV recognized in Hyde Park one that she had seen in her dreams. Master Moria gave her a preview of her future mission and work. Thereafter, HPV followed Master Moria's direction unerringly, without any swerving from the lines laid down. In so doing, HPV laid the groundwork for tearing down, exposing, and purifying the religion of the day of its dogmas and dross, so we can get an idea of the truths that underlie each and all. HPV traveled in Canada and crossed the Rocky Mountains in a covered wagon at a time when a woman traveling alone was unheard of. She also energized with her presence Mexico, South America, the West Indies, India, Tibet, and other places. The soil of the United States seemed particularly fertile due to the influence of the masters in the formation of this young country, and the view that this land mass is in the proximity of the world's next great civilization. So in 1873, HPV was directed to come over and break through the dogmatism and materialism of Western science and religion. HPV suggested to Colonel Henry Olcott and William Q. Judge that they establish the Theosophical Society, which they did on November 17, 1875. From then on, her entire being was dedicated to bringing out the ancient wisdom as kept by masters until the world is ready for it. Her revelations debunked the popular idea that ancients were ignorant. Evidence continues to surface of ancient civilizations, much more advanced than any we know about today. The evolutionary process that HPV laid out makes it obvious that we have evolved from the highest levels, and that each of us has unlimited potential for good in our continuing process on our obligatory pilgrimage through matter and onward. In explaining the aim of the Theosophical Society, HPV wrote, quote, "As the highest development, physically and spiritually on earth, of the creative cause, man should aim to solve the mystery of his being. He is the procreator of the species, physically and having inherited the nature of the unknown but powerful cause of his own creation, he must possess in his inner physical self this creative power in lesser degree. Close quote. During 1876 and 1877, HPV held open house every evening. Many prominent persons of her day attended. The discussions were lively and sometimes lasted into early morning. Her work has spearheaded a big change in thinking and more compassion towards society and the creatures of the world around us. It has influenced many minds, like Thomas Edison, an early member of the Theosophical Society, Dr. Albert Einstein, who kept a copy of the Secret Doctrine on his desk already referenced, Frank Baum, who influenced us to look within for wisdom and strength with his story of the Wizard of Oz, Mahatma Gandhi, Motilal Nehru, and B.P. Wadia, labor reformer, philosopher, and founder of the Indian Institute of World Culture. A body of literature was needed to accomplish the aim of Theosophy, so HPV set out toward this end. Her first masterpiece was Isis Unveiled. Written in English despite her limited exposure to the English language at the time, she wrote that Isis Unveiled contains a mass of original and never hitherto divulged information on occult subjects. Neither ideas nor teachings are mine, she said. Every word of information found in my writings comes from the teachings of our Eastern masters. And many a passage in these works has been written by me under their dictation. Mr. Judge noted that Isis Unveiled attracted wide attention, and all the New York papers reviewed it, each saying that it exhibited immense research. The strange part of this is, as I and many others can testify as eyewitnesses to the production of the book, that the writer had no library in which to make researches and possessed no notes of investigation or reading previously done. All was written straight out of hand, and yet it is full of references to books in the British Museum and other great libraries, and every reference is correct. Either then, we have, as to that book, a woman who was capable of storing in her memory a mass of facts, dates, numbers, titles, and subjects such as no other human being ever was capable of, or her claim to help from unseen beings is just. Close quote. Sylvia Cranston wrote on page 154 of her book on HPV that HPV had started the writing of Isis Unveiled while staying in the home of the highly respected Professor Corson of Cornell University. The professor and others observed that she wrote about 25 closely written pages per day, including accurate quotes from hundreds of books not in the professor's home, and some of which were very rare and difficult to get. In 1879, the Theosophist was issued. In 1887, the first issue of HPV's magazine, Lucifer, appeared. Its emphasis was on ethics and philosophy rather than psychic phenomena and spiritualism. In 1888, forming of the esoteric section was announced. The Secret Doctrine was published also in 1888. HPV wrote that she had made here only a nosegay of culled flowers and had brought nothing of her own but the string that ties them. Pull the string to pieces and cut it to shreds, if you will. As to the nosegay of facts, you will never be able to make away with these. You can only ignore them and no more. So, in today's public domain of self-styled spiritual teachers, we have a reminder here that we can use the original teachings to reach the pure and true teacher. A long line of such teachers exists, known as the Guru Para chain. Each of them is a pupil to a mightier Lord. This gives us a glimpse of our potential should we dare to respectfully follow in the footsteps of our predecessors, take hold of our birthright, and direct all that is within us to dedicate every moment to unfolding from within and blossom forth the gods that we already are. Within HPV's 5 messages to the annual convention of American Theosophists is wise counsel, encouragement, and reminders of the essential purpose and objectives of the Theosophical Society, as well as our hopes for the future. In July 1889, HPV wrote and published The Key to Theosophy. She subtitled it A Clear Exposition of the Ethics, Science, and Philosophy for the Study of which the Theosophical Society has been founded. The second edition of the Key was published in 1890 and adds a 60-page glossary. In late 1889, HPV wrote her last book, The Voice of the Silence. This devotional book is dedicated to the few, to those who make Theosophy a living power in their lives. In July 1889, HPV opened a club in a poor section of London for working women. The transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge were compiled and issued during 1890 and 1891. HPV suffering from chronic kidney disease came to an end when she contracted the flu during an epidemic raging in London. After a few days of illness, she left her 59-year-old body in the presence of several friends. Her last words were, quote, "Keep the link unbroken. Let not my last incarnation be a failure." HPV left us with guideposts that, if followed, we can avoid the fall into the modern trap of experimentation with this and that self-styled spiritual leader or life coach. So that we don't fall into this bottomless pit, we need to understand that there is a codified science of the soul that existed since the night of ancient times, and that study required the aid of those who had mastered it in practice. We have that aid in the teachings of Theosophy that HPV gathered for us. All the attacks made on Theosophy have been aimed at discrediting HPV. No one has yet successfully disproved the validity of any of the propositions nor historical facts that she advanced. She wrote, quote, "For the last 15 years, an incessant shower of ugly accusations has been poured upon me. every libelous charge, from immorality and the Russian spy theory down to my acting on false pretenses of being a chronic fraud and a living lie, an habitual drunkard, an emissary of the Pope, paid to break down spiritualism, and Satan incarnate. Every slander that can be thought of has been brought to bear upon my private and public life. Not a single one of these charges has ever been substantiated. I have lived surrounded by friends and foes like as in a glass house. Nothing could stop these wicked, venomous, and thoroughly unscrupulous tongues. Mr. Judge was her constant defender as her staunch colleague and attorney. After her death, he responded to the invitation of a New York newspaper which had retracted a slanderous article by writing, quote, "the esoteric she," close quote. He himself became a victim of slander, even from within the Theosophical Society. In the early 1900s, Mr. Crosby revived the original teachings, and B.P. Wadia took up the banner of keeping the link unbroken after Mr. Crosby left his body. In 2014, the Theosophical Company published the Secret Doctrine Dialogues from notes of meetings where HPV talked with students. So the mission of HPV, in a nutshell, focused attention on the Lodge of Living Adepts, specifically on their service of humanity. 2, it declared man's immortality as a spiritual being, since a portion of the universal spirit is in him, as it is in all other beings in nature. 3, demonstrated the universal reign of law, which no being can transgress. 4, it showed how cycles of civilization arose and fell. It declared that a sincere and conscientious application of our innate voice of conscience and intuition is the only key to spiritual and occult progress for man. 6, it demonstrated the existence of the invisible, astral and spiritual, as was meant there, realms of being within the physical. And 7, karma, the law of moral compensation, and reincarnation are shown to be the active agents in the process of man's evolution. Man alone is the maker of his own destiny. He has the power to choose.
What I'm going to read came from United Lodge of Theosophists in Mumbai. Dear friends, we send you fraternal greetings and warmest good wishes on the auspicious occasion of White Lotus Day, which marks the passing away of our teacher, HPV Blavatsky. We at Bombay Lodge will pay homage to HPV by reflecting upon real HPV and her message, taking to heart Mr. Judge's words, quote, "As the babe to the mother, as harvest to the earth, so are all those bound to her who enjoy the fruit of her life." The Bombay Lodge will observe the occasion of this special meeting on Sunday at 6:15 p.m. Fraternally yours, ULT, Mumbai. For us, this commemoration is special today, but those of us who love her and are appreciative of the work that she has done, we keep her in our heart and the line unbroken. Please join us for commemoration completion today in fellowship so that we can renew our bonds. Thank you.